All right,
Dang,
guys,
he's in there.
welcome to our Twitch stream for the weekly recap. We're back here with explaining our episodes 3 and 4, and we have Jacob again, our DM. We've got Michael, who plays Bron, and we've got Zach, who's one of our head modifiers on the modifiers
Moderators.
moderators.
Modifier.
He's a
I'm a
modifier,
modifier now.
guys.
Modifier works
Zach's
too.
the top modifier here. He's one of our head moderators on the channel, and he'll be asking some questions today. Basically, we'll go ahead and jump in with what happened in episodes 3 and 4. It was a very intense set of episodes that I don't fully remember all of, but we'll get to that later. So basically, what happens in episode 3, we had just finished up our job that we did for Vesper in Whitestone. We had gotten her back to the castle. Was it a castle, Jacob, or was it a more of a like a
Yeah, Castle Whitestone. Yeah.
Castle Whitestone? Yeah. Had a couple things happen in Whitestone. I think we finished up a little bit of business there. I think we might have got some more supplies and stuff.
Yeah, Vesper arrested her brother. No big deal.
Yeah, we had Vesper arrest her brother. Jump in if I missed something really major. And then one of the big things was Michael's character, Bron. He parted ways with his captain and decided to join our crew for basically for our adventures that we are now on. From there, we grabbed a couple horses and we started heading down to Western. And on our way, we stopped. We got through a forest and we stopped at an opening where we saw a giant. We thought it was hurt, so we went up to see either if it needed help or just to kill it because it was a giant and that seems exciting. So went up there. It was an undead giant. We killed it. We found a little bit of loot in its little hole that it was kind of like caving out in, and then we ended up finding a cave behind that cave. So we went into it, started exploring it, and it kind of started this cave of puzzles, which goes into episode 4. So at the very end of episode 3, basically Jacob introduced us into this puzzle of this old dwarf who he had been long dead, but it's the ghost of a dwarf who we're following his notes. So every time we'd come up to another part of the story, we would have to fight basically like a ghost version of the dwarf. Once we killed it, a note would pop out. We'd read that note, and that would get us more story from the ghost's point of view. It was kind of like a diary entry, and it would also kind of help us progress into finishing the puzzle for the dungeon. So the first one, oh man, it was, Zach actually talked to me about this the other day. I don't know how it took us so long to figure out the elements challenge, but at the very, very end of episode 3, right where we left off, was basically there were 4 pedestals. All we had to do was put water, earth, fire, and air on the 4 pedestals. We got the first 3 relatively okay. It took a sec. Wind took us about 10 minutes after we got the first 3 because we didn't know how to put wind on a pedestal. So I think at the end I ended up like holding my breath on top of the pedestal, and that's Jacob's like, I'll just take that. That's acceptable. So
my idea for that was you cast like some sort of like wind spell into a jar, and then. But
was unable to do that.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
It was well, that one was just more like you definitely took something that was creative and allowed it in the story, which was cool because like we had cast wind spells onto the pedestal, just not like into a jar or anything. So then we get into
I was probably being a little bit too specific with that one.
I don't know. It was cool. It was a really interesting situation that you put us in. So at the end of that, we ended the episode there, got into episode 4. Episode 4, I think, is our longest episode that we have, just because Corey came back and we just had a huge fight in that we could not really break down. So
yeah, that was our roughest battle yet. Too,
yeah,
I think.
it was crazy.
That was dangerous.
The Knoll one we just had was a little dangerous, but this one was that one was pretty dangerous. So we got basically what starts episode 4. We continue on this dwarves story. We're getting notes from him as we kill him. We kind of we're finding a couple things through the cave and stuff, and we finally get to a point in the cave where we got all of these almost all of these dwarven statue pieces that we needed to put back in some statues' hands. And I'll have Jacob get into that later in the specifics there. But basically, there were 4 dwarven statues, and we had to put whatever item they were supposed to be holding back in their hand. And then Jacob, what was it that we fought for the 4th item, or we fought after the 4th item?
You fought for it.
Okay. So
I go really deep into that one.
Yeah, we'll get into a talk about that. But in short, I don't remember this part because I was drinking a little bit, and
the Flagons.
Oh man, we one or two of us will do that every once in a while, but that happened to be the one week where I definitely I got into it a little bit. But we had a fight with an alternate dimension of ourselves, which was really interesting. I remember most of the stuff that I was involved in for that. Like, I wasn't belligerently drunk. I remember like what I did, and like I remember kind of the stuff that I was involved in, the talks that I had with alternate me. But I don't remember like a lot of my players getting almost to death hurt, which ended up being a very exciting battle to watch. Zach said it was a really cool one. He commented on that today. And it's really interesting how Jacob put it out. So we ended up, spoiler alert, we all lived and we beat our alternate selves. We do not know if we killed our alternate selves. Jacob never gave us a definite answer on that. But we would assume and hope that they are okay on their other dimension because it was ourselves and we kind of felt bad about it. We got the last piece and we brought it back up to the front and we beat the dungeon. And it was, I think it's the only like actual like really like dungeon-y dungeon. Like as far as dungeons go in Dungeons and Dragons, that's
an actual dungeon.
That was a full dungeon
dungeon.
It was the most dungeon-y dungeon. So yeah, that's.
I can go really deep into that once we get into it because there's a huge backstory with that stuff.
So yeah, I mean that was everything that happened in that episode. So yeah, those are episodes 3 and 4 up on YouTube right now. 5 and 6 come in this week, and we'll have a recap on those next week. But we'll go ahead and get into a conversation about both of those episodes now. Zach, do you have any questions to open us off with?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with this one. I guess kind of how long, kind of what did it take to come up with the puzzle and all that kind of stuff?
So, usually I don't do a ton of planning. I have like general ideas of what I want done because I know that these guys will inevitably do something that I don't expect. So you need to kind of be flexible. But the puzzles, I had been designing this dungeon specifically for about 4 years. So this was originally going to be part of an original campaign that I created that was based off Norse mythology, and there was going to be a lot more like, that's why there's dwarf ghosts and stuff like that. So I decided to adapt it into this. The riddles, I looked those up because like I enjoy riddles, but I don't want to have to write them for something like the elements. I'm just like, people have written those before, so it's like I'll figure that out. And then the mirrored statue one, played a lot of Zelda games, and I specifically made this one for Michael because like Michael loves the Zelda games. There's a specific puzzle in, I think it's Twilight Princess, when you go to get the Master Sword and you have to move those statue things. And they move together.
They move at the same time, There's a lot of Zelda games that use that actually.
Yeah, so what was the third one? Oh, the third one with like mixing the potion stuff. I just thought that'd be kind of fun. And if you pay attention, Brady like knocks these things out. Like he got the elements one like immediately when they started, and no one listened to him.
Yeah, he was on it.
Like Brady is really good at these, so like I know when he's playing, I'm gonna have to up my game a little.
Yeah. A quick
final
note on that one is just on that point that you're making, Jacob. Sorry to cut you off. Is like in like Dungeons and Dragons, like I think we talked about this a little when we played Call of Cthulhu, when we played our sessions with you, Michael. It's like in Call of Cthulhu, you really have to use your head a lot more. Like you're not your character's head.
It's like all problem.
It's all like you and your actual person. Like like I mean, some of the stuff in Dungeons and Dragons is pretty simple. You go out, you fight monsters, you play your character, you buy stuff, you get stronger. But then Jacob throws in these puzzles, and it gets to you because like it's stuff you actually have to figure out, and it's not something that the DM can give to you really. Like if you roll maybe a natural 20, maybe he can give you a hint, but puzzles are a great thing to throw into a campaign because and luckily we have Brady because we have a guy who can figure those out really really well. I mean, I'm sure we would have gotten to it at some point, or Jacob would have had to help us out, but it was definitely a fun thing to go through. Just having different people at the table who are good at different things in real life that end up playing well into the game. So
yeah, and riddles are really hard to do in D&D because like with Brady instantly getting the potion thing, if he wasn't there, then how long would it have taken the rest of us? And in his mind, Brady's mind, oh, this is easy, but in the other 5 people, this is hard. So how do you set your baseline for what is easy and what is not?
Yeah.
Another thing about designing puzzles in D&D is you're not designing them for the characters, you're designing them for the actual players.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have like that Zelda puzzle thing. I knew Michael would get that just because of how much he's played Zelda. Not necessarily Bron. Like if you watch the episode, Bron's not the one that figures that out. Michael does. Michael knows what's going on, but Anzu and Zygon are the ones that basically figure it out. So like it's a weird thing. Like I think that puzzles are the thing that breaks the fourth wall in D&D, because like, but then you get into like Corey, Lochnar should not be able to solve puzzles, so it kind of hamstrings Corey as a player because he can't be like, oh well, here's the answer as Lochnar. So it's kind of it's weird. I like puzzles. I think dungeons need puzzles. I don't think like everyday like opening a door needs to have a puzzle on it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, most fun, I think one of the things that draws people into Dungeons & Dragons isn't like, it's not the puzzles, it's the fact that you're playing a game completely based on luck, and it's really fun when you get lucky on a good roll, and it's like really aggravating when you don't get lucky, and like you get like a really good balance out of like, oh yes, and like, oh shit. So and then also like a lot of people jump into it for storytelling because storytelling is just it's really interesting to be part of. Like it's like creating your own video game if you're able to kind of like, if you're into like being able to be a little bit more creative and not just have to see it in front of you. A lot of people will obviously use, like we use Tabletop Simulator right now, and we had a board that I was building back in the day with little miniatures, but most of it's in your head for sure, and that's one of the things that draws you into Dungeons and Dragons. But having some stuff like a puzzle once in a while is definitely a really cool thing to have. So
yeah, and like my big thing is I want our viewers to be able to see how broad D&D can get. I don't want it to just be like, oh well, they go talk for a little while and then they fight something. Like puzzles or something, and especially with chat, like I know that when we were doing it, chat was like, man, this is so easy, which kind of like adds to it. I like that.
Not all of us are watching chat all the time. Me and Michael will be off and on chat because we're moderating, and then Zach is not he's not like specifically talking to us while we're streaming. He's also moderating the chat and watching the stream with other members. So not everyone's always watching the chat. So like, it could take us like 5 to 10 minutes to even see some of the older posts that you guys put up on chat. So it's not always the most efficient way for us to try to figure it out.
Yeah, and
go ahead. Mike.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, and you also, I try not to metagame as much as possible. Like I think we talked about it in that 3rd episode, that undead giant that that we all fought. Like I knew as a person what was going to happen, but Bron did not. And then we were all like, what are we supposed to do about this? And I was like, I know what to do, but Bron doesn't, so I can't freaking do it.
Yeah, that's one of the hard things for a lot of us, and it's something that you definitely have to get used to when you're playing, because it kind of like, some people do enjoy playing like that, and that's not a big deal, but for a specific purpose of number one, storytelling, and number two, we're streaming this to people, so metagaming gets really boring to watch. You want we had just a quick note on Brady, who plays Zygon, our warlock. We all know Eldritch Blast. We all know. You viewers might not know. Eldritch Blast is a spell that warlocks have, and it's a very powerful spell. And it's a
it's the best cantrip in the game.
Yeah, it's a
far.
cantrip, which means he can cast it as many times as he wants. He doesn't have a certain amount of times he can cast it like other spells. But it gets really boring if you're just sitting there and every single time he's like Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast. He's tried to mix it in a little bit. So that's another thing about metagaming.
That's not going to be a thing. Don't worry.
Don't throw that at us yet.
So Zach, what's your next question?
I know you were wanting to talk about kind of the big fight. So if you go ahead and go into that.
Around this time is when I really started to have the players talk and think more about like their stories and their origins and stuff. And that was partially because I needed them to know, and partially because I needed to be able to do what I was going to do. So I sent out a text in our group chat, I need your guys' stats. And I remember Caleb was immediately suspicious. He was like, why do you need our stats?
I was.
And I was like, I need them for reasons. I was just like, I need them to better track stuff or whatever. I don't even remember what my excuse was. But the reason I did that is because I was going to take their existing stats and move them into their alternate forms. So the stats that they had at that time are the same stats that their counterparts had, just in different areas. So like, for example, Lochnar was a barbarian, but when I changed him, he became like, I think he was a wizard or a sorcerer. So his 18 strength became an 18 charisma or an 18 whatever the heck he was. And I wanted to make sure that the alternate version backstories, all it was is one thing in their lives was different from the players. So like, for example, instead of a pirate captain coming to Bron's village when he was little, it was a order of paladins. That was the only change, really, and that just spirals. For like Animus, instead of appearing near the druids, he appeared near some engineers and like artificers, so he became an artificer instead of a druid. Thea's is probably the most dark. Hers I changed more on like a world level. I basically said that Singorn, the elf place, experienced a massive plague, and that's why she's crazy and kind of jittery and stuff. Which that might like. Here's
what about
a little
Anzu becoming a barbarian?
Yeah,
a little rabbit
Anzu
dude
becoming a barbarian. So after he leaves the college, Anzu just went out into the woods instead of going like to cities, basically, and he just goes insane and becomes a barbarian. That was my only thought with that one.
What were you gonna say at the end of Abby's?
Yeah, but Thea's another thing about that is that sometimes alternate dimensions share more similarities than others. That's about as far as I'll go with that. But yeah, so I wanted to design. I knew that the party, like, puzzles are great, but eventually they just become kind of like, oh man, this is really like, oh man. So I wanted a puzzle that was also a fight. So I thought, what a better way than to have them fight themselves. And it seemed to work out. People really liked it. And those mirrors did not exist in like the Tal'Dorei campaign or anything like that. That's something original. And there are more of those mirrors in the world. And they have a special purpose. But that's about as far as I'll go with that. But yeah, that's basically the fight there and my inspiration for it.
Yeah, it was a good fight. You guys should check that out. Everyone watching, it's a long episode. Yeah, I'll make a real quick note on that. So basically, I mean it's not like an unknown thing that we are drinking during our streams, and a couple of us do get drunk every once in a while. So it's not None of us are driving or anything, but sorry. And so one of the big things that week was that I was getting really nervous because that was the first stream where I had like my full setup. You guys won't see that on YouTube anymore, but if you look back at our very first videos, if you look at the one shot that we did with Oblivion of the Rogues, and if you look at like the battle beforehand, then you can see like my old setups, which were just like DM screen, R screen, giant like free picture in the background. And that week was the first time I'd finished all the Photoshop stuff in the classes I had, because we didn't have a lot of time when we had classes going on. And I'd finished all of our artwork was done that week. That we paid some of our awesome animators at our school to create our artwork. And then I just got really like anxious that night because I had remembered that we had really choppy stream the last week, so I had kept like jumping up, and I was grabbing a beer, I was making sure the stream was running right. Like I'm looking at the screen half the time, I'm looking at my phone half the time. So like I think I was drinking more out, and like I was also really happy that that Corey had come back, and I was like really excited. So I brought a couple extra beers that day, like some like more higher class beer, not just some light beer. So I just ended up drinking some heavier beer and a little bit more of it than I usually do because I was number one anxious and number two really excited. But
I remember like I didn't really realize that you were drunk until like we got really into the fight, because like you would ask me questions and then literally like 2 minutes later you would ask me the exact same question.
Yeah, you can definitely.
And I was like,
you can see it for sure. Yeah, it was.
But like it worked out, and I mean you haven't been that drunk since.
No. Now I'm more running the stream a little bit more. I'll grab a couple beers when I'm at my apartment or when we're running it. But Zach, do you want to go ahead and jump into some questions for Michael's character Bron?
I can certainly do that.
Michael's
So
What?
in the hot seat.
Oh.
hot seat. We gotta come up with like a thing that pops up like hot across the thing position.
I'll work on it.
So Michael, you're kind of the guy, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of what is your side of joining the group, but also did you already have Bron ready as a character?
No, so it was something Jacob and I had talked about before, and then I made the character on the off chance that they were going to need somebody else, because I know enough about it that I can just jump into it without any issues. And I, for one, had never played a rogue before because everybody always wants to play a rogue. And so I jumped on that to try it out, and a swashbuckler sounded way more interesting than the typical. I know you hate it. that
OP.
sneak attack for everything.
Jacob, you're saying it's OP, but like realistically, he's our only one who can do like a ton of damage. Like Corey doesn't roll well enough to do a ton of damage, and then all of us,
Whatever, Caleb.
all the rest of us are
Whatever,
doing
man.
just kind of like really. I mean,
Between Michael and Hunter counterspelling everything
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
that's a
And
little-
Hunter
that's-
hasting me.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, I had no knowledge about the campaign, just that they might be needing somebody else in the future, and I'm like, okay, I can jump in there. So I made a character, and then it came around, so I jumped in, and then we started streaming at my place.
Yeah, that was a quick another quick note on what Michael said at the beginning of that, is that when you're playing with a group of people, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to have a whole group of the same class. Like, it's not a big deal if you're jumping in League or something, because I mean, I even ran a one shot where we had 3 rogues. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but for the most part, if you're jumping in a campaign that you know is going to last a while, like we're already 10 months in almost, and we know this is going to last another year. It's exciting, it's really cool, you get really invested, but like you don't want to have 3 rogues or like 3 fighters and then like maybe 1 wizard or something.
Because when we were starting, I was like, guys, everybody needs to be their own individual class. One, for narrative purposes, it's just more fun, and two, I don't want to have to deal with 6 rogues
Yeah.
because like, but yeah, it was a little bit of planning there. And also like with new players, it's kind of hard for them to play the deeper characters. Like rogues can get kind of complicated, as I'm sure Michael's figured out. There's a lot of combat math, and I didn't discourage anyone from playing any class, but I was like, if you're new, you might not want to do wizards, even though Hunter didn't listen to me. But
they got the hang of it though. They got the hang of it.
Yeah. So I saw that we had a question in chat.
Let's take those. Let's take those after Zach's questions.
Okay, we're gonna take those afterwards.
Yeah.
Sorry, chat.
We haven't done chat questions before, so we'll for any chat questions that we have for our weekly recaps. We'll go ahead and add those in after Zach finishes up his questions for Bron. We'll take 2 questions from chat because otherwise we'll go too long.
Caleb's being such a taskmaster.
Good. Okay.
Gotta try.
So Bron is collector of blades. Is the way Caleb put it to me.
Yeah.
What does Bron look for getting a new sword? Or is there really characteristics or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, basically just that they are unique. He pretty much fell in love with blades when Mallory first arrived. That's the captain that pretty much taught him what he knows, and he became not obsessed with them, but he values them a lot more because of what he had seen and learned from her. And so pretty much just a blade that he could wield. Not so much daggers and stuff. Like Thea picked up, I think, a couple of special daggers at this point, and he doesn't have much interest in those. It's mostly swords in particular, and pretty much just as long as they have unique properties. They don't even have to necessarily be magical if they are just very finely crafted or anything. He just appreciates the craftsmanship and the value of the weapon, not just for, oh, this can do a lot of damage, this can cut really, really well, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's
Dude, I like.
That's also something I think Jacob kind of added to your or allowed your character to have, is that Bron can recognize either like a high crafted sword, as we saw a couple of our episodes ago, or just like a very like a legendary or sword, or like a type of sword made by a certain blacksmith, stuff like that. I think, is that something you added to his character a little bit, Jacob?
It was a book that Bron had found in the library back in Whitestone.
Yeah.
It was a book, like an autobiography almost, of a specific smith that later became well known. So it's more just his work than just, the
Just
overall
knowing
legendary swords or something.
Okay.
I can't wait until you guys get to Amon, because
Mon's got a lot.
I have created
big city.
I've created 2 new blacksmith characters
We're
that I am
2 weeks away.
so excited.
So, or depending on how long it takes
be
us.
there within a week or 2.
Yeah. All right. Well, Zach, go. Do you have another question for Bron or Michael?
Yep.
For Bron's character.
So,
together, man.
does Bron his swords, or if they already come with a name, kind of use that name?
They have come with their own names because they're already either besides his when he originally came into the story, he was dual wielding scimitars, and only one of those 2 was magical, and the other one didn't have a name. It was just functionality, basically. He was still new, setting off on his own, so he had a weapon given to him by his master, and that was Undine, the water blade, and the other ones had, like, Rose's Thorn was already crafted by a well-known blacksmith, weaponsmith, whatever you want to call him. So yeah, they've already been named basically beforehand in some way, shape, or form.
Cool.
What was,
I have.
Oh,
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna just ask what sword. What three? Do you have 3 swords right now? Is that how many you have? What 3
Yeah.
swords do you have right now? What are their names? And
The
just,
Sword of
You're gonna need
Efreet.
like a special bag of holding or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the part of the reason why I designed him with a trench coat is because he's a black and white tiger, and so whenever he's trying to be sneaky or something, his white stripes would stick out. So he's got a black trench coat, and also for functionality, has a lot of space for holding blades and swords, and nobody knows what he's got. But he has the Sword of Efreet that he typically wields in his main hand because it's a very powerful scimitar. And then the lately he's been using Rosa's Thorn because he's been coming across more hardy opponents, and also it's made by it's a very unique high quality blade, so he wanted to use that also, and because it's a different type of blade to try and master.
yeah. All right, Zach. What was your last
I
question?
got one question for Jake.
Oh, man.
Why not like counterspelling counter?
Oh,
So okay,
this is a short
there's
answer,
a very
Jacob, you
weird
know this.
rules interaction. So counterspell is at a reactionary speed. It's you have to be able to see it. The problem is that I think counterspell is way too easy. As well, like at this level, eventually it's going to be really hard to counterspell stuff. But I think that counterspell stunts story. So like a perfect example is our last episode when I'm trying to electrocute everyone. Counterspell just makes it to where I don't know. There's this weird pull between a DM and a player for who's in charge of the story. And when I get counterspelled, one, it tilts me where I want to. Anzu is making me so mad just because of counterspell. And two, I feel like it's kind of like putting a brake on what the DM wants to do, which is fine, but it's just more annoying. Especially with like spellcaster villains. Like I'm super concerned that a spellcaster villain is going to come off as a chump because of counterspell, which is annoying.
Even though it really helped us this past episode, I don't know, like, if I was in that situation, like your situation as DM, I was thinking to myself, I wouldn't have allowed it because Hunter's character was facing the opposite direction. So even if he rolled,
so that's why I had to
to
make a perception.
But yeah, that's what. See, and I like. It's not. It's like I'm not. It's completely your choice, and it actually helped us out a lot because we probably would have gone down. Like, if you really want to help get yourself away from so many counter spells, like if Hunter is not facing, or if his character is not in any sort of way like looking in that direction, he wouldn't even be able to make a perception on that. He would have to like roll a natural 20.
I just want my players to have agency, you know, like eventually when you guys get into the higher levels, counterspell will not be good enough because it's a flat roll. When you're coming up against spells that are like a level 9 spell, that DC is a 19. You have to roll one number to get that. So it just eventually gets to where it goes out of hand.
I think another thing, it kind of goes back to that whole riddle conversation. Like, I think a lot of it is just kind of chance. Like, the fact that not only was he there to counterspell what you were trying to do each time you have tried to do it, basically, but if he wasn't, then not only does it shift a little bit in the other direction, but it can be like a domino effect if that thing didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to, you can't just try and create the combat based around, well, Hunter's going to try and counterspell this, so then I need to make
because
these
me
things.
as a DM also has to play my characters. So like the Knolls did not know that Anzu was a wizard, so there's no way that they're going to know he can counterspell.
Yeah.
So it's just like, counterspell is annoying, but I'll get over it.
Yeah, it's more of a fact.
I think you can counterspell a counterspell.
Yeah.
I've played Magic the Gathering.
It's just a point of like it's kind of like what happened. Like Hunter's character Anzu could not like he counterspelled a counterspell, but he now cannot counterspell again because he already used his reaction. But then Brady tried to counterspell. But like overall, it's like there are just like points where a DM kind of has to just be like, oh, that can't happen. Like he can, and like if Jacob does that, like I understand there's a reason for it, and he has a specific story. Like it's not always up to like, oh, you rolled really high as a character, you have to give it. Like if I roll like even a natural 19, like Jacob doesn't have to give it to me if he has a specific storyline going and it's not fully like, against the rules. Like
there's a big debate in the D&D community is should DMs fudge rolls. I personally believe that if it is story driven, like I don't want you to catch my main villain being a villain the first time you meet them. I just don't want that to happen.
Well,
so they're going to roll really well every time. So it's just like there's this weird struggle between story and game. And to me, D&D is a storytelling game. It is not a game telling a story.
Yeah. I think that actually answers one of our first questions from one of our questions from chat.
Shout them out, Caleb. It was requested that we shout them out.
Oh man! All right, let me go back to the first one. Question number 1, brought to us from ML2356. Question 1, Jacob, do you make this up as you go, or do you know beforehand what direction you want to take the game?
Yes and no. So the main story, I have known what we're doing the whole time. I've had it set since first session. I know what we're doing. The little stuff, like the character interaction, no, I don't plan that at all. Mainly because I know like an NPC's personality. I know how they're going to react to certain things. Like, for example, Vesper is very flirty. So Anzu being flirty with her, while she might not like Anzu that way, she's still going to be flirty. That's just her personality. I'm not going to be like, I remember when I was first starting to DM, I was like, okay, here's everything they can say. And I was writing it like it's like scripted dialogue in a video game. You can't do that with D&D.
Yeah.
Because like then you'll have a Lochnar who just randomly punches someone. Okay, they randomly punch someone, so now what am I going to do? So the overall story, yes, I have planned. The day-to-day story, no, that's almost 100% improv.
Yeah, it's one of the big things about being. I think we talked about this in a video a little while ago, where number one, you need to be a good storyteller to be a DM, but you also playing D&D and being a DM will make you a better storyteller because it makes you improv. It doesn't just like, you don't just have to go out and like improv in day-to-day life. You're playing a game that you're improving 100% of the time. Like we have no scripts. This game is not scripted anyway.
No, we're not scripted. None
of us know a single thing that's going on.
That's
gonna
another
happen.
thing. Like
so...
I don't tell the players anything. Like I just say what they find out at the end of each session is all they know. Sometimes because I like torturing them, I'll send them a picture of a monster.
And I can answer the next question. Same person. Do you guys get to pick your class / design your character and their backstory? So yes, we pick our class through Jacob. We designed a class. If you're playing a game with some other people, you might just tell your DM, hey, I want to play this, and then like that's what's gonna happen. With us, Jacob really got into. He helped us. He didn't create our backstories for us, but he helped us build our backstory in a way that it would build into
fit the world.
Yeah, fit the world. Like my character, he is from Shadowfell, and his character's main goal is to stop something that's going to ultimately come to the material plane and cause a lot of damage. Well, I don't know how Jacob's going to fit that in yet. I just know my character knows. Is that what I said?
No, I know how I'm going to do it.
So I know as my character, and this is something we do know as characters. Our characters, Jacob will usually tell us, know certain people and know certain things. So Abby's character knew her father. It's not just something that she didn't know that just popped out of nowhere. She
didn't know when he was going to show up, though.
No, yeah. So
like,
she knows her father, but she doesn't know when he's going to show up. But because she knew her father, she helped create her backstory in a way where when she saw her father, she could have a full dialogue with her father Jacob playing her father, and it made sense to them, but to all of us, it's like, man, where is this coming from? Like, how are you guys talking about this right now? And with Bron's character, with his captain, like they have a backstory that only Michael and Jacob know, and they can hold out a conversation with those two characters, but the rest of us are hearing it for the first time. So a lot of times you'll see a lot of like other of us, me and Abby make faces a lot at certain conversations that end up happening or things that happen, but it's like it is genuine surprise and shock when we hear like certain things that get thrown in out of absolutely nowhere that are really crazy. So,
and when like there's also stuff that I intentionally do put in because I know it's going to trigger something in my players. But like back to character creation, like everybody who is in the cast right now had not played before except for Michael and Caleb. So like they didn't even know what they could do. So for example, everybody had basically picked their characters. Abby was pretty much last, and I was like, right now no one has there's no healers. And I knew that would become a problem. So
I was gonna take a healing path.
Yeah.
I did tell Jacob
Yeah.
If Abby wanted to play something else. Since I'd played before, I know druids can be a main healer if they want to, and you load
you
other
have to
people.
spec it properly.
Yeah, you have to spec it properly, which is another thing that's just very stat based that you'd have to learn over time. So, go ahead, Jacob. Sorry.
Yeah, long story short, like I never tell my players what they can and cannot play. Now, I have had some people who are like, I want to play like a demigod who has like super awesome powers, and I'm like, no, you can't do that.
That's
Yeah.
a different campaign.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to.
that's a very different. That's a very different setting, which we might do in one shot. But I will let a character play any person they want, or a player play any character they want, as long as it fits within the world that they're in.
Yeah, you have to realize characters have to build. If you're a demigod who has all the power, your character doesn't have anywhere to build. They're just already like you could probably have a
you've also got to
character.
think about it, like
You could have a character who
we are from a film and like scripting background, most of us. So like we've been taught character development, not
Yeah.
to sound like better than anyone.
we spent money
like-
and went to college for 4 years to learn this. I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
so,
put
like,
that out there. That is a
It doesn't mean we'll do it great. It does not mean we'll do it great, but like there has to be a build up. You can't just start at the top of the mountain, because then the only way you can go is down. So it's just
yeah.
That's
It's just-
development.
It's kind of development. I mean, it's
I mean,
like you
fair
can have a
enough,
character.
Michael.
I think one of the biggest things is like I think me and Jacob talked about this. Hercules is a great example because Hercules did not start off as a powerful god, but he started off as the spawn of a god. So like you can play a character who will eventually become like one of the most powerful people of all time, as most of the characters will when you reach level 20. But you can't have a character start like you can't start as Zeus. You can't start as an actual god with all the power, and your story's already been built, and there's no story to go forward on except for I'm a god. I'm gonna keep on being powerful. So yeah. But I think that's pretty much it. One thing I will shout
One
out.
more question. I thought.
Was it the
There was
merch
one
thing?
more. It was, are we doing merch?
Not
Which
yet.
I have an answer for that, and and Caleb has an answer for that. My answer is we will do merch if and when we hit Twitch affiliate.
Yeah.
We will
So,
start doing merch.
We are 28 people off affiliate, guys. We've been building this for a while. I created stickers already, and I'm going to try to do giveaways. I got my first giveaways out this past Sunday for our 2 Neos in the chat. And we got some to my sister, who's been also watching our chat, and then also Zach, who has been watching our streams since we first started. I think he was one of the first people I got to start watching it. And then I'm also getting stickers out to the rest of the group. So, and that's just like stickers are like one of the first things that we can afford and build towards the next thing. Like maybe we
It's
can
mainly
get
price, guys.
Yeah.
It's mainly that is our main issue here.
Our
'Cause, like,
prices, when we hit Twitch affiliate, we can have people
we
maybe
can start reinvesting in the channel,
Yeah.
essentially.
So we're hoping to just build towards merch. We will eventually try to get some smaller channels. It's a lot harder to get a good merch line going, But I mean, we'll definitely offer some better stuff other than
And,
just stickers at some
like,
point.
We the Twitch affiliate thing is a really big deal because then we can start actually like creating revenue for the channel.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, everyone that continues to watch us and watches us every stream, you're amazing. It's great. If you have friends that are like interested in D&D or nerdy or like anything like that, please turn them on. Like, have them watch the special stream that we're doing this Saturday with Caleb.
Yeah.
Fun plug.
Quick little shout out to that.
Yeah, but please just share this. Like, I don't care if you share it with your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, your kids. I would be a little cautious about the kids one because, you know, Caleb gets drunk sometimes.
It's not always me, guys.
But,
It's not always me, I promise.
But
No.
yeah, just keep sharing it, and eventually maybe we'll have T-shirts or mugs or insert
Something.
your product here.
Yeah. We'll think about what probably the next best thing. I would think the next thing that I want to go to are glasses, beer
I'm thinking mouse
glasses,
pads.
or just drinking glasses.
Mouse pads.
Yeah.
Mouse pads is a good
Shot
one
glass.
too.
That would
Stuff
fit
like
with our
that.
brand.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like drinking glasses, like alcohol, like beer glasses, stuff like that. Those are like some of our ideas on merch, but we'll continue to update that as as the time goes on. I think that's gonna be kind of the end of our channel here. Thank you, Zach, again for getting some questions prepared for us. Thank you, Michael, for being on and giving us a little bit of backstory on Bron. We will have you on again once we start catching up with some of the other players. Jacob, thank you again for coming on and giving us some of your insight as a DM. Hope you guys can jump in. We are doing a Saturday and Sunday stream this week. Saturday, my character is leaving the rest of the group for one day so he can carry out his Aramente, his first Aramente, which is a quest that, little insight, is a vision quest according to Jacob. So,
Yeah.
For the most part, it's something around those lines.
It's gonna be like that scene in Force Awakens when Rey grabs the lightsaber.
Yeah. But so basically, yeah, check us out this Saturday. If you don't have time to check us on Saturday, go ahead and watch that in the Twitch streams before Sunday, because Sunday we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But come back on Sunday. Continue to support us Sunday nights at 6 o'clock.
So next week we're gonna have another recap episode. Who's gonna join us for that one?
Oh
Caleb?
yeah, so next week I'm hoping to get Anzu. So Hunter's gonna hopefully be on. We'll have Hunter on. He's very he's another loud character, like kind of like me, very talkative, very interesting character too. We get really into his story, and we're hoping to get Brady in the next 2 weeks also. So look for them in the next 2 weeks on the 2 next weekly recaps. Check us out Sunday nights, and then also check us out on Saturday. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thanks everybody. See you.
Thanks, guys.
See you Saturday.
See you guys.
See y'all.
See ya.
Same time.